So I said, gee, if we had taxed the 0.9% of our people, that would mean over 99% of the Americans would not have been affected by this tax. We just taxed these high net worth 15%. That would have raised $1.7 trillion. Would have meant the government could stimulate our economy, no deficit. There'd be nothing for the Republicans to be upset about. There'd be nothing for Mr. Obama to be defensive about. They would have done fixed the economy, and they wouldn't have to borrow a nickel. No government debt, no debt, none of that. And those rich people would not have only had their house untouched, their car untouched, their income untouched, they would still have 85% of their investable assets. And they would have made a contribution to fixing the American economy that can make them feel patriotic and proud for the next 6 generations. We didn't do it, but we could have done it. Now the example from Europe. And this is where you should hopefully feel something good about yourself. In Europe, where the governments did like the Americans, borrowed like crazy, pumped the money into the banking system, bailed out, all the same kinds of things. They also, like in the United States, they borrowed the money. And the problem is, they borrowed the money from lenders around the world who are now realizing that having lent all this money to governments, they're beginning to get worried that the government may become unable to pay back. Just like people with mortgages were unable to pay for them, or students couldn't pay for their loans, or people with credit cards. You know something? A government might not be able to pay back. And even if it was able to, it might be under such political pressure from its people that they wouldn't let them pay it back if it meant lost jobs, lost services. So the lenders began to say to governments around the world, we're not going to lend you money to fix this crisis because you're not a reliable, you're too risky. You want money from us to keep going? To fix your crisis? We need a guarantee that you'll repay the loan and that you'll cover the interest. We need you to set some money aside. So here's what we want you to do. We want you to raise taxes on your people and lower your spending on social programs and government employees to put aside the money that will be earmarked to pay the lenders who've made the nice loans to you to keep you going. This program is called austerity around the world. It's when the government raises taxes and lowers spending on people. That's an austerity program. But you should understand it's austerity to pay off the people the government borrowed from because it didn't have the courage to tax the wealth which would have made it possible to fix the crisis without borrowing. You get it? Good. So in Europe, the governments began to impose austerity. Has to do that. You have to keep the loans coming. You have to because they haven't the imagination. They haven't the ideological space to even imagine the little arithmetic I just did for you 5 seconds ago, in which there's all that wealth, which if you taxed it, then you don't have to borrow anything. But they can't imagine it. So they begin to impose austerity. So unable to think out of the box, if you like, out of the normal way of thinking, that even socialist party leaders in power imposed austerity. Worst example, Greece. Greece has a new government, socialist government. Very old, traditional socialist party. The Papandreou family seems to run this party. And successive generations. They come to power last autumn in an election. There shall be no austerity. Within weeks, they're imposing austerity. Socialists imposing austerity. In May and June of this year, all public employees in Greece were informed that their annual salary would be cut, and was cut, by I believe 15 to 20%. That's an austerity, big time. But there have been successive general strikes, demonstrations. The Greek proletariat, the working class, has begun to react in all kinds of ways and to fight back. As if that weren't enough. Last week, on Tuesday, the 7th of September, the trade unions in France called a general strike. Very remarkable act. 2.5, depending on how you count. Some newspapers had it 3 million, some newspapers had it only 2 million. Who cares? 2 to 2.5 million French people went out on strike. Nothing happened in France on that day. The The only trains that ran were the trains that took people to the demonstrations in the various cities that had been organized. The Communist Party, the trade union, there are 6 national trade union federations in France. Now, we have one, AFL-CIO, basically. They got 6. That's very French. And they don't like each other, they fight. They all agree and they unify to carry out this general strike. What was the strike about? Was it about a cut in their salaries of 15 to 20%? That is so out of the question in France that even a Sarkozy, you know, a mental midget like that, couldn't come up, wouldn't even think of putting that forward. Somebody would feed him bad foie gras. So that wouldn't happen. The modest proposal, here's what the French would put the people in the street. The French government has proposed, the Sarkozy government, that your age at which you can draw your full Social Security pension equivalent would be moved from 65 years of age to 67. And the age at which you can begin to get a partial payment will be moved from 60 to 62. By the way, exactly the same proposal is being discussed in Washington by the Social Security Commission that was established by Obama right now. So in France, he put this idea forward, and 2.5 million people said, no, you're not doing this. And you should be aware that in the demonstrations in Paris, in many of the districts of Paris that are called arrondissements, in these districts, the demonstrators were in layers. There would be the people carrying the red banner of the Communist Party committee of the 8th arrondissement, and right behind them would be the St. Agnes Catholic Church of the arrondissement, because they don't want it either. That's why Mr. Sarkozy has a 20% popularity rating. That's why most French people think his greatest achievement was marrying an Italian model. Okay? Which is true. It's certainly a more interesting thing that he did than anything else he's ever done. And he's finished politically. In the last regional elections in France, they have 22 regional governments. In those elections, 21 of them were taken over by the left, the coalition of left forces. Only one was won by the same party that Mr. Sarkozy. So his future is as exciting a prospect as that of George Bush, and for the same kinds of reasons. But there's real opposition. Even more amazing, on the 29th of September, all of Europe has agreed to go out striking and demonstrating. I do not know, I mean, it could be my history is rusty. I don't know of this ever happening. I never heard of an all-European day of action against austerity. And the slogan is a slogan I believe was originated in Greece. And the slogan goes like this: we paid for your profitability. We're not going to pay for your crisis. That's not a statement to the government. That's a statement to the capitalist class. Because in Europe, the ability to see a crisis and to put the blame on the enterprise, on the financial, is what marks Europe to be so different from America. In America, we have an economic crisis, and we're furious at the government. If I were a businessman, this would alone make me want to pledge allegiance every day 3 or 4 times. What a wonderful system, where you can lay off millions of people, throw them out of their house, and who's doing this? Companies lay off people. Employers lay off people. Banks foreclose. And the foreclosed people and the unemployed people are furious at the government? What? That's about the same as being unemployed and getting very angry at the neighbor's dog. It's a misunderstanding of where the problem. If you're being fired, then the first person you want to get a little pissed off at is the one who fired you. If you're the government didn't fire you. And the government, but the genius of American capitalism is to deflect the anger of the victims of an economic system, furious at how else could you explain that everyone I know believes that in the election to happen 2 months from today, the American people, angry about this crisis, are going to reject Obama and bring back the Republicans.